It cost Argentina $600 million to stage the '78 World Cup, the most expensive soccer jamboree ever. And when they won it, 25 million Argentinians erupted into the most remarkable outburst of joy without malice the world has ever seen. That is the power of the World Cup, the single most prized trophy in sporting history. This is the story of the 11 tournaments to date, of the 46 winners and losers, and of soccer, the game of the century. The history of football goes back 2,000 years, even though the game as we play it today is fairly recent. On summer feast days in the Piazza della Signoria, Florence, a Renaissance version of football with 27 players on each side is still played. A bloody and murdering practice, rather than a fellowly sport or pastime, is the manner in which football was described by Puritans in early 18th century England. It was played to undefined rules by any number of people for any length of time in parks or highways. The matches often became very violent. King Edward II had banned football in London on pain of imprisonment because of great noise in the city caused by hustling over large balls, from which many evils may arise. Early versions of the modern game were played in the public schools and universities of England in the first half of the 19th century. Winchester, Eton and Harrow each had their own teams and their own rules. The Eton War game is still played each year on St. Andrew's Day. 20 players from each side battle it out on a pitch 120 yards long by 6 yards wide, the goals being a tree and a garden door. In all the years that the game has been played, only 2 goals have ever been scored. The working class had their version of soccer too. This is how they start the annual Shrove Tuesday game at Ashbourne, a small village in Derbyshire. The villagers divide themselves into 2 teams and merrily thump the ball across the countryside, as they have done annually since AD 217. In 1863, the foundations of the game were first laid by the British in a London public house, the Freemasons' Arms, when the Football Association was formed. From that day, the modern game began to take shape, and uniform rules were developed. Never again would the village football match be quite the same. The man in black is a referee. In 1878, he was allowed to use a whistle for the first time. Rigid crossbars were introduced in 1883. A record of the goals was kept by scoring knife cuts on the goalposts, hence scoring a goal. Goal nets appeared in 1891. One of the first examples of international soccer was when Renton Football Club came down from Scotland and defeated 2 English clubs. They declared themselves world champions. In 1872, true internationalism had begun with the meeting of England against Scotland. It ended diplomatically in a goalless draw. The earliest film of the old enemies meeting is from 1907 in Newcastle, where once again a draw was the result, 1-1. British businessmen, sailors and engineers introduced the game across the world. At the end of the 19th century, some European countries had formed their own football associations, even for the ladies. In India and other parts of the world, the game spread like wildfire. In 1894, football was played in Austria for the first time. The game even reached the jungle. However, it had taken the French to see the potential of football as a world sport. In 1904, the International Federation of Football Associations, or FIFA for short, was formed. The foundations for the World Cup had been laid. When war came, patriotism was the order of the day, and that went for footballers too. At the outbreak of war, the British formed a special football battalion. Star players prepared to forsake soft leather for hard steel in the trenches of Ypres and Verdun. The French had their regimental competitions as well. After the First World War, it took FIFA 15 years to regain many of its former members. Much of the credit for this was due to Jules Rimet, a publisher, who became president of FIFA in 1921 at the age of 48. He retired 33 years later at the age of 81. Rimet worked tirelessly to fulfill the dream of a world football tournament open to every nation under the sun. In the Olympic football finals in Paris in 1924, Rimet, like the rest of the world, began to take an interest in the small South American republic of Uruguay. They beat Switzerland 3-0. This is one of the first examples of slow-motion cinematography. They were to become champions again in 1928 in Amsterdam by defeating Argentina 2-1. Rimet persuaded the president of Uruguay to hold the first World Cup. As one Uruguayan said, "Other nations have their history, we have our football." It had taken 26 years for FIFA to fulfill its dream of a world football competition. Four European nations decided to enter for this first World Cup. The journey to Uruguay took a grueling 14 days. On the 18th of July, 1930, at the unfinished Centenary Stadium in Montevideo, the first World Cup got underway. The four European countries were guests of honor and were the first to parade in the opening ceremony. But the South Americans dominated the scene from the first kickoff. Leading goal scorer of the tournament was the Argentinian, Stabile. The final between Argentina and Uruguay was a repeat of the finals in the 1928 Olympics. Both teams wanted to play with their own ball, but Argentina won the toss and played with theirs. The Uruguayans were expected to win, but at halftime, the Argentinians were leading 2-1. But Uruguay soon equalized through Sea and eventually won with a goal by the one-armed Castro to make it 4-2. Uruguay were the first World Cup champions. In 1934, 32 countries entered for the second World Cup in Rome. With the eyes of the world focused on his country, Mussolini cunningly turned the event into a huge public relations jamboree for his fascist party. Italy reached the final against Czechoslovakia. Vittorio Pozzo, the now legendary Italian manager who Mussolini had persuaded to return from England, had molded the national squad into a winning team. It was an exciting final, played in front of a vast crowd. Although hundreds of Czechs crossed the Alps to support their team, the Italians won by 2-1. Besides the gold statuette, the team carried off 10,000 lira each. Whatever reservations FIFA had over the tournament's political implications, the World Cup had proved itself as a major sporting event. In 1938, the World Cup came to Paris. 2 million francs were spent on the stadia and the players' accommodation, the largest investment in a soccer tournament up to that time. Goal scoring was high. Brazil met Poland in the first round, winning 6-5. The final was between Italy, managed by Pozzo once more, and Hungary. Italy deservedly won the match by 4 goals to 2 and had lifted gold for the second time. For FIFA, the French finals were a sporting and financial success. Pozzo and the Italians were jubilant. But once again, Europe went to war. Internationalism and everything FIFA represented was shattered. London's Arsenal Stadium was just one of the many stadia on both sides to be severely damaged. The fourth World Cup was held far away from the ravages of war-torn Europe. The year was 1950. The country, Brazil. Italy, the World Cup holders, kept in trim on the long journey to Rio de Janeiro. The major matches were held in the famous Maracana Stadium, which holds 205,000 and is still the largest football stadium in the world. In many ways, it was an extraordinary competition with exciting, dynamic football. Unfortunately, India withdrew when FIFA insisted that they should wear football boots. England, with Billy Wright and Stanley Matthews in the team, reached the World Cup finals for the first time and lost 1-0 against the United States. Nobody could quite believe it. The 199,850-strong crowd who turned out to watch the final between Brazil and Uruguay is still the largest on record. It was completely unexpected that Uruguay should triumph. Although Brazil scored, Uruguay won the Rimet Trophy 2-1. Nobody could quite believe that either. There were mass faintings, hysterics, even suicide. A samba had been composed called Brazil the Victors. It was never played. The 1950 World Cup proved that it was the world's most important football tournament. Switzerland was the host nation in 1954. It was the first World Cup to be covered live by television, although the transmissions were only seen by a limited audience. Goal scoring reached incredible highs. 140 goals were scored in the 26 games. On a rainy Sunday, Hungary risked playing an unfit Puskás in the final against West Germany. The gamble seemed to work. Hungary scored twice in the first 8 minutes. But West Germany fought back with great determination and talent. They pushed home 3 goals to emerge victorious. It was Hungary's first defeat in 30 internationals. West Germany were the new World Cup champions. The venue for the 1958 World Cup was Sweden. Brazil's exciting players, Pelé, Bava and Didi, and their team's new ideas, gave the world a feast of entertainment. Television covered it extensively for the first time. Brazil introduced a new system, 4-2-4. 4 defenders, 2 midfields and 4 forwards. And the world took note. In the final, mighty Brazil met gutsy little Sweden. A David and Goliath situation. David even struck the first blow. But Brazil hit back quickly and eventually slaughtered the Swedes 5-2, including this famous 3rd goal scored by the 17-year-old Pelé. It made him a national hero. This is Pelé of Brazil, the greatest football player of all time. On October the 1st, 1977, he retired from full-time professional soccer. That day, the Giants Stadium in New York was filled with 70,000 people and a great deal of emotion. Dondino do Nascimento, Pelé's father, sat beside Muhammad Ali. President Carter sent his son Jeff along to thank Pelé for his devoted work in launching soccer in America. Pelé's wife, Rosemary, gave him the most public kiss of their married life. And England's former World Cup captain, Bobby Moore, received a warm bear hug from the great man himself. Pelé's last salute to the world was typical of the man. The match between the New York Cosmos and Santos of Brazil symbolized Pelé's long career in soccer. He got his first professional break with Santos, and for the last 3 years has played with the Cosmos. The scoring was symbolic too. From a free kick, he rifled home the goal of the match, and the crowd went wild. At half-time, Pelé took off his number 10 shirt and presented it to his father as a souvenir. No Cosmos player will ever wear number 10 again. Pelé finished the match in the white shirt of Santos. An unforgettable day had ended an unforgettable career. It began near São Paulo, Brazil, in the town of Três Coracoes, when Edson Arantes do Nascimento, better known to the world as Pelé, was born on October the 23rd, 1940. Like these kids today, his passion was soccer. At 14, he was discovered by Santos. At 17, this goal made him a national hero, and Brazil won the 1958 World Cup in Sweden. In 1966, he married his beautiful wife, Rosemary. She has remained by his side ever since. But Pele's experiences in the 1966 World Cup in England almost made him give up World Cup soccer. In the match between Brazil and Portugal, he was a marked man. Within 25 minutes of the first half, 2 Portuguese defenders brought him down viciously. Pelé was quoted as saying afterwards, "Soccer has been distorted by violence. I do not want to finish my life as an invalid." On November the 19th, 1969, 80,000 fans packed the Maracana Stadium in Rio to wait for this moment. Pelé's 1,000th goal, a feat never thought possible in one man's career. For Brazilians, and Pelé especially, the 1970 World Cup in Mexico is the most memorable. In the final against Italy, Pelé scored the first goal, thus assuring Brazil's success. They were the first team in history to win the World Cup 3 times, and were specially honored by being allowed to keep the Jules Rimet trophy. It now resides at the headquarters of the Brazilian Football Confederation in Rio de Janeiro. Later that year, Pelé went to France, the world's first ambassador of football. A year later, he retired from the national team. But his career was by no means at an end. Warner Communications, the American entertainment giant, lured Pelé out of retirement to play for the New York Cosmos. His 3-year contract was estimated to be worth $4.5 million. Almost single-handedly, he launched soccer in America. In the summer of '77, Pelé's last season in America, the Cosmos were unbeatable. The Cosmos versus the Tampa Bay Rowdies. In a round of playoffs for the U.S. Soccer Bowl Championship, the superstar of superstars delighted the crowds with a virtuoso display that proved why, at 36, he was the highest-paid footballer on earth. 10 days later, the Cosmos beat the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, and Pelé is watched by the biggest crowd ever to see a soccer match in North America, 77,691. Three days later, Pelé and Rosemary arrive at LaGuardia Airport to fly the 1,000 miles to Fort Lauderdale for a return match with the Strikers. Even at that time in the morning, he can't escape the autograph hunters or the tiredness of a tight schedule. Before the match, he trains and swims. That night, Pelé brings world-class football to a small town in Florida. The Cosmos win again. There is jubilation in the locker room. Steve Ross and Ahmet Ertekin, the men who had risked millions backing the Cosmos, could thank Pelé for making their dream come true. Portland, Oregon. Pelé is the guest of honor at a banquet before the U.S. Soccer Bowl final. This is the last chance the North American Soccer League have of honoring the great man. As Phil Woosnam, NASL's commissioner, puts it,
"The man who gave us credibility." One of the headlines said, Pelé, quote, "My mission is accomplished."
But for all the tributes, Pelé is essentially a modest man.
I just want to say thank you for all the players and Liga, all the people which support me.
On the day of the final between the Cosmos and the Seattle Sounders, Pelé was in great form. Although Seattle was strongly supported by the Portland fans, they lost to the Cosmos 2-1 in a hard-fought match. Pelé, for the umpteenth time in his career, had led a team to victory when it most mattered. In the locker room afterwards, there was a moment that anybody who was there would never forget. As he raised his young son Endino shoulder high, the words that immortalized Pelé rang out once more. Brazil were World Cup champions for the first time. Two years before the World Cup was held in Chile, much of the country had been reduced to rubble by a series of earthquakes. Despite the devastation, the president of Chile's Football Federation, Carlos Ditborn, pleaded with FIFA to let his country continue to stage the tournament. By 1962, a fine stadium had been built in Santiago. But the cautious 60s had arrived, and teams were terrified of losing. Sadly, these finals included the now famous Battle of Santiago, the Chile v. Italy match, which Chile won 2-0. It was full of violent incidents, which FIFA referee Ken Aston of England did his best to control. Even Brazil, the masters of attack, became more defensive and adopted a 4-3-3 system. However, they still proved their superior skill by beating Czechoslovakia in the final 3-1. For the second time running, Brazil won the Rimet Trophy. Wembley, 1966. It was a new age for international football. All-out defense. The hatchet men, the destroyers, the iron defenders had arrived. The Brazilian team, and especially their number 10, Pelé, were marked men. The superstar was badly injured. The destroyers had won. The referees had a frustrating time. Latin and the Argentinians played themselves out of the tournament with some cruel football. Many have rated the final between West Germany and England as the most exciting cup final to date. Germany scored first, but England equalized and later took the lead. But the West Germans managed a comeback in the dying seconds. Extra time was to be played. To this day, no one knows for sure whether England's third goal was a goal. It was given, but even from another angle, it is not clear. This goal, the fourth, gave Geoff Hurst a hat-trick, the first ever in a World Cup final. Her Majesty the Queen presented Sir Alf Ramsey's heroes with the Rimet Trophy. Alf Ramsey, England's team manager, had promised the nation that England would win the cup, and they did. Though the atmosphere in Mexico was politically unstable and emotionally highly charged, the 1970 World Cup went off without incident. The Europeans were worried by the high altitude and heat, but Brazil enjoyed playing in conditions admirably suited to them. They were convinced they could win the trophy for the third time. But to do that, they had to beat Italy in the final. In the first half, the score was 1-1. In the second, Brazil demonstrated that South American-style football could beat the defensive European approach. It was the destruction of the destroyers. Brazil held the glittering trophy for the third time, and FIFA allowed them to keep it forever. Munich, 1974. The newly designed World Cup was to be played for the first time in this tournament. Several lesser nations reached these finals. Haiti and Zaire, who represented Black Africa for the first time. Even the Australians had a look in, but their exits were pretty swift. It was Holland and West Germany, led by Cruyff and Beckenbauer, the two most exciting and dynamic teams who rightly reached the final. They call him Kaiser France. He has won nearly every footballing honor there is to win. At 32, Franz Anton Beckenbauer is a superstar in the true sense of the word. A veteran of 3 World Cups, he became a professional at 17 with Bayern Munich. In 1977, he quit to join the New York Cosmos.
I missed nothing from Germany, and I'm very glad to be here. And the people, I like the American style. The people are very kind and very open, and everybody asks me, can I help you? It's a very good, very kind country.
The Cosmos needed a superstar to replace Pele, who was retiring, so the Cosmos began to sell Beckenbauer to the American public.
I have to change my position. I played 13 years in professional soccer, a sweeper, and now I have to play in the midfield. That maybe it's for me a little difficult. But my style, I didn't change.
In his new midfield position, Beckenbauer showed New Yorkers that he was still a virtuoso when it came to pinpoint passing and ball control.
The importance for me, of course, was 74. We win the World Cup, and maybe this is the highest whatever a soccer player can arrive. Yeah? But the most exciting World Cup was 70 in Mexico. It was a beautiful World Cup, and I never forget in my life the both games against England. England lead 2-0, and we win in the overtime 3-2.
In this seesaw of a match, Beckenbauer's goal helped West Germany to victory. They beat England 3-2 in extra time.
So we played against Italy, the big game. We lose 4-3, and Italy go to the final.
This semi-final between West Germany and Italy was one of the most memorable matches in the Mexico World Cup. Despite the fact that Beckenbauer was fouled and badly hurt, he showed iron will and determination by continuing. West Germany lost 4-3, but nobody will ever forget Beckenbauer's remarkable display of personal courage.
Both games are, and I never forget in my life.
In New York, the Cosmos make sure that Beckenbauer is expertly cared for. With millions of dollars invested, the Kaiser's feet have never been in better shape. In his first summer in New York, Beckenbauer could walk the streets unrecognized and reflect quietly on his superstar status.
I don't like the word superstar. Muhammad Ali can say he's a superstar. He fight alone. We need the team. Nobody can say in a soccer team, I won this game. It is a teamwork. And then maybe you can be a superstar. But alone, you don't be a superstar.
Beckenbauer has earned his superstar status through 15 years of dazzling and consistent soccer. He has won over 100 international caps, been named European Player of the Year twice, been voted top West German player 4 times, and has enough World Cup, European Cup, and West German Championship medals to fill a tea chest. But it was the 1974 Munich World Cup that gave Beckenbauer his greatest personal triumph, when he led the West German team to victory in front of thousands of his local Bayern Munich supporters. Beckenbauer had brought the World Cup back home.
Maybe 3/4 from my life is soccer, of course, and I'm happy to be a soccer player, and I hope I can play this game maybe 2, 3 or 4 years more.
This is Johan Cruyff of Holland, a brilliant soccer stylist and a very private man. In the last 2 World Cups, Holland has reached the final and lost. In 1974, Cruyff captained his side and gave an unforgettable performance. This is the training headquarters of the Dutch Football Federation in Zeist, 30 miles from Amsterdam. It was besieged by hundreds of youngsters doing their darndest to catch a glimpse of their idol on one of Cruyff's infrequent visits to Holland from his home in Spain. The Dutch national team were preparing for their final qualifying match against Belgium for the 1978 World Cup. Nobody could quite believe that this could be the last time he would be training with his national squad. The following night, Cruyff once again demonstrated the qualities that have earned him the title superstar. A brilliant positional sense combined with balletic style and grace. The Belgian defenders, like many before them, resorted to hacking down Cruyff in a desperate attempt to stop him. But, as they learned, like many before them, Cruyff is unstoppable. Explosively fast and tremendously powerful, Cruyff has a left foot more accurate than the average footballer's right.
Voor de wedstrijd, want ik vind dat het was misschien.
Ever since the age of 18, when he was a top soccer player for Holland's mighty Ajax club, Cruyff has been under the constant scrutiny of the press, the price of superstardom, but a heavy burden to bear for a man dedicated to leading a life away from the game. He has a quick temper, too. At one stage of the 1974 World Cup final, he was booked by Jack Taylor after the referee had blown for half-time when West Germany was leading 2-1. Winning is everything to Cruyff. After the team had beaten Belgium 1-0 and qualified for the World Cup, an elaborate reception was given for the squad. Would Cruyff still not want to play in Argentina? That night they sang for him, pampered him, and hoped to persuade him to stay in the national team. But Cruyff stuck to his guns and didn't play in the 1978 World Cup. For Cruyff, his beautiful wife Danny and their children came first, and he didn't want to leave them, and who could blame him? The 74 finals in Munich proved to be his swan song as a World Cup player, a superstar of sheer genius. The game itself was a set piece of sheer footballing skill, a perfect example of attacking football. It kept the biggest TV audience ever, 1,000 million, glued to their sets.
Within a minute of the kickoff, Cruyff was brought down. West Germany equalized through a penalty of their own. Then Muller hit a brilliant winner. West Germany, the host nation, had won the World Cup for the second time. Despite numerous gloomy forecasts to the contrary, despite political upsets and galloping inflation, the 11th World Cup opened on June the 1st, 1978, on time in the River Plate Stadium, Buenos Aires. The stadiums, the hotels and TV transmitters were finished and operating, the teams were made welcome, and another feast of soccer was about to begin. The following day, France met Italy, and history was made. French forward Bernard Lecombe scored the fastest officially recorded goal in a World Cup when in just 38 seconds he beat the Italian defense and astounded the world. Tunisia, only the second African country to qualify for the World Cup, Zaire was the first in 1974, surprised the soccer pundits by hammering Mexico 3-1 in their first match. Even though there was little chance of them making the second round, they met the mighty West Germany and held them to a goalless draw. Iran, another emerging soccer nation, acquitted themselves well, outplaying Scotland for long periods. If they hadn't given away an own goal, they might have won. Instead, the match ended in a draw, 1-1. Ali MacLeod's much-publicized Tartan army came to grief at the hands of Peru, the little-publicized South American team. Peru demolished the Scots 3-1 and held Holland to a goalless draw. They turned out to be the team to watch as they got through to the second round, smashing 4 goals past Iran. After a traumatic beginning in Argentina, including the sending home of Willie Johnston, Scotland managed to settle down and play well, but it was too late. In their match against Holland, they needed to win by 3 clear goals to stay in the tournament. They got 3 goals, but unfortunately for the Scots, Holland scored 2, suffering their only defeat in the qualifying round. Scotland flew back home. Much favoured to win the World Cup, Brazil only just scraped through their first-round matches, drawing with Sweden and Spain and beating Austria. When they met Peru for their first match in the second round, it was a different story. They beat their fellow South Americans 3-0. After a goalless draw with Argentina, Brazil suddenly stood a chance of a place in the final. They scored 3 goals against Poland and were victorious. For a few short hours, Brazil looked as though they had made the final. Then the news came through that Argentina had pushed them into the playoff for 3rd place with Italy. Italy had been well favoured from the start. They were known to have an iron defence, but in this World Cup proved capable of deadly attack. In this match, they inflicted Argentina's only defeat in the first round. The score, 1-0. With another 3 goals against Hungary, Italy became the top goal scorers in their first round group, and in 3 consecutive matches chalked up 3 wins. West Germany, the cup holders, scored 6 against Mexico, and on this form looked as though they might repeat their 1974 success. In the second round, they met their opponents from the '74 World Cup final, Holland, but they could only manage a draw. By the time West Germany met Austria, they needed at least 5 goals to reach the final. Instead, they suffered their only defeat by 3 goals to 2 and were out of the World Cup. On June the 21st in Rosario, playing a few hours after Brazil's victory over Poland, Argentina knew that to get to the final, they had to beat Peru by 4 clear goals. That evening, nobody stirred on the streets of Buenos Aires or Rio, and the world held its breath as Argentina scored goal after goal. 6 in all found their way into the Peruvian net. Argentina, runners-up in the first World Cup, had made it to the final again, 48 years later. In the second round, Holland were in devastating form. They beat Austria 5-1. Only Italy stood in Holland's way for a place in the final. The Italians, who needed a 4-0 victory to reach the finals themselves, opened the scoring and then became defensive to keep their lead. But Holland replied with 2 goals. They had reached the final for the 2nd consecutive time. The playoff for 3rd place was between Brazil and Italy the day before the final. Brazil, the best organized team in the tournament, were 1 goal down at half-time. The talented Italians tried to hang on to their lead by defending in numbers once more. The tactic didn't work. Brazil smashed 2 goals home to win 3rd place in the '78 World Cup. On Sunday, June the 25th, 1978, 77,000 people packed the River Plate Stadium for the World Cup final. Both Argentina and Holland were determined not to be runners-up for a second time, but one of them had to be. It took 37 minutes of the first half before Argentina got the goal they wanted. Ardiles slipped through a pass to Luque, who passed to Kempes. He scored with a low shot into the net. Argentina looked nervous as they came onto the field in the second half to face fierce Dutch attacks. The equalizer came in the 81st minute when René van der Kerkhoff placed a fine cross which Kurt Vliet headed into the net. 8 minutes later, Brandts crashed the ball against Bilal's right goal post, but didn't score. The match went into extra time. In the 103rd minute, Holland's dream of winning the cup was shattered when Kempes weaved past 3 players and shot into the net. The Matador, as he is nicknamed, sent the crowd into a frenzy of delight. But it was really all over when in the 114th minute, Kempes again made a solo run to put Bertoni through for the final goal of the match. An estimated 1,500 million viewers watched across the world as Daniel Passarella raised the World Cup. Argentina had become only the 6th country to win the world's most prized sporting trophy, and in so doing proved once more why soccer is the game of the century.